So we get to go, the conversation can go whatever direction you want it to go in. Because having done many bicycle trips, I have a lot of little information about what it takes, what it's about. But having also cycled around the world, as I was saying earlier, I also have quite a bit of information about visas, vaccinations, registering with the State Department, money, just all of those things that emergency evac insurance, another little tricky thing. I called up an insurance company and said, I'm going on this bicycle trip. What if I fall down and break a collarbone in Kazakhstan? You have insurance for that? And they do. But there's all kinds of insurances. I don't care if you're going on a bike trip or if you're skiing in Switzerland, what if you get lost and they have to send a Swiss helicopter out for you? You never know. There's insurance for everything. So that's what I like to tell people. So if you're thinking of doing something that's not mainstream, just look into it. Okay. I have a short slideshow here. It's only in its entirety is 20 minutes long. It's only about a quarter of the pictures that I took while I was away. The book here, which is another little interesting thing, that has all the pictures. I was able to blog, I was on the road 120 days and I was able to blog almost every night. Even in the desert of China, I was able to find a signal because I had my laptop with me and I was able to blog almost every night and send it over to Crazy Guy on a Bike, which is a website for people who tour. They host my story, people get to read it and follow me, family too, they would get able to follow my journey. Then I found out when I got back, a friend of mine said, you know what, we can take this whole story off a Crazy Guy on a Bike, I can put it on my iPad, we can send it over to Staples, and Staples will print it. I didn't know that. And so for 35 bucks a piece, I had 10 of these printed. So I don't have a published book, but I have a printed book. And so my brother is owner of one, and my mother, and my girlfriend, and so it was worth it, So if I drop dead tomorrow, there's a hardcover printed book of what I did. As I was speaking with Brian earlier, Brian is, you went across the U.S. on your bike, and Brian is thinking of getting published, as I am. And that, riding a bike days on end is a heck of a lot easier than getting a book published, as we both agree. I at least have the printed book. Yeah, good luck, right? Yeah, I don't know about the published book. That's a whole nother ordeal. I've looked into it and it's a scary thing. I'd rather ride in the deserts of Kazakhstan again than try to get a book published. We can start off with, if anybody has any questions now, I'll answer them. But if not, I can start the slideshow. It's very quick. Yes, Brian.
You've probably been asked this one 1,000 times before, maybe at the end. I don't know about the beginning, but what got you started in global riding? That transition from United States to worldly traveling is a whole nother leap.
My first bike tour was the Alaska Highway.
Yeah, that's international.
So I started at 2,000 miles. My first bike tour wasn't to the White Mountains and back, for an overnighter. I wouldn't suggest that anybody do that as their first bike tour, okay, because I made a lot of mistakes or what have you, but it was 2,000 miles. So I kind of started it at a high end, and that was like 500 miles a week, which is another high end thing. I'm not a fast, I don't call myself really fast, I'm kind of like, I get up and go every day. I just get up out of my tent and I go all day, and so I'm able to get a bunch of miles in. After that, I did a bunch of smaller ones, and then I finally went across the U.S. 3 years ago. And then, yeah, I became I quit my career, which wasn't much of a career, and I became a personal trainer, went to school to be a personal trainer. And so in keeping with that whole health and fitness and biking thing, I thought, well, let's put something on the map that'll separate me from the pack. And I said, and I had looked at the flat map of the world. This isn't a very good map, but I had looked at it, and I had researched, gone to the Guinness Book of World Records stuff and see what their conditions were for qualifying for a bike trip around the world. And it's like you got to go 18,000 miles, and you got to go in one direction. And they didn't have a lot of conditions, but 18,000 miles. I did the math. Well, I'd be out there like 7 months, even if I didn't fall apart. I didn't have 7 months and that kind of money, so I made it my own kind of trip, And I said, how far is it from here to here? How far is that, And I do the numbers again, but it's like, I don't know, 10,000 miles. I think it's about 10,000 miles. And, well, there's a problem, though. The problem is, if I go south of the Black Sea, I gotta go through Turkey. Ooh, Then I gotta go through Iran, which again, politically I would consider it, okay? But then I can't go through Afghanistan, I gotta go through Pakistan. And when I get to the Pakistan part over the last couple of years, that was the country that really stopped me from even thinking about doing it. I don't know if I could get a visa for Iran, but I know that there are American cyclists that cycle in Iran, but they go through a tour group. So it was the Pakistan part of it. I said, I don't want to do that. So I had to rethink my way, and so if I stay north of the Black Sea, I can go through Moldova, yeah, Ukraine, yeah, Russia, yeah, and then you got this big desert of Kazakhstan. That was the problem for the trip. So I'll back up a little bit. But that's the way I said, if I'm going to do this, that's how I'm going to do it. And so I looked at the trip in 3 parts. Part 1 being, I can cycle to Kazakhstan. That's about 3,500 miles. I've already cycled across the U.S. I know what that distance is. I can do that maybe on a good day. Once I get into Kazakhstan and China, that's part 2 of the trip. I don't know how I'm going to get across. Big desert, China, closer to Mongolia than I am in Tibet. Another desert and one road. I don't know. If I get that far, I'll wing it. I'll do it. And then if I can get all the way to the east coast of China, then if I'm still okay, then I'll cycle across the United States. We'll see. That was a we'll see thing. I never told my work that I was going to cycle around the world. I didn't tell anybody I was going to even try it. I spoke about it with my son and Susan. I said, if things go right, I'll just keep coming. I just keep coming. I wasn't going to be so bold to say, you know what, I want to cycle around the world. No, I can average 80 to 110 miles a day, and that's what I average 95 miles a day from Madrid to Ataru, Kazakhstan. 95 a day for 38 consecutive days, no days off. So that brought me to around 3,500 miles, around there. And then from Ataru, Kazakhstan, I took a train across to Almaty, Kazakhstan, a 1,500-mile, 2-day train with 300 Kazakhs. What a story that is. And then I got off the train in Almaty. I cycled about 200 miles to China. Got into China, rough again. I had my choice of the Silk Road or the highway. The Silk Road is you'll see pictures. But I stayed on the highway for as long as I could. The police would boot me off every once in a while, but I get back on. And wind, mountains. It wasn't a complete bike ride in this part of China. It just wasn't. It was just too dangerous at points and too hot. And I'll get into that. And then finally I made my way to Shanghai. you know, from China to Shanghai, from the west coast of China to Shanghai, it's about 2,500 miles. I think or 2,800. I biked 2/3 of it or 3/4 of it. And then I finally made my way to Shanghai. I spoke to Susan. I said, "Am I out of money yet? You know, I'm still okay." It's my mom. You know, I called Mom. You know, the first time I actually told Mom, you know, the scope of the trip. I was somewhere in China. I said, "Mom, I'll be home soon." You know, 85 years old. I couldn't tell her. You know, and so I flew to San Francisco, and from San Francisco I biked home nonstop. And I wasn't out of the woods yet because, as I was saying earlier to Brian, who went the northern route, him and I both done the northern route, which is a piece of cake, Route 2 from Seattle. Once you get to San Francisco, you get to Stockton, California in about a day and a half, and then you go up the Sierra Nevadas to Lake Tahoe, and you go from 1,500 feet to 10,500 feet, or 10,400, and it's just a hellacious climb, and then Lake Tahoe, Steamboat Springs. It's just you're either in the desert or you're either climbing or suffering from the heat, and the Rocky Mountains is like 700 miles wide at that point. Okay, whereas in Seattle, it's not wide at all. It's one pass. You go over the Cascades, you stay in the Yakima Valley for 3 or 4 days, get to Spokane, into Idaho, then you start climbing a little bit, or Kalispell and stuff, and then you cross over at Marias Pass in Glacier Park, and then it's flat for 1,500 miles. It's flat through Montana, North Dakota. It's just flat, so it's kind of easy. So if you're thinking of going across the United States on a bike, go Route 2. It's nothing compared to any other way. It's really simple. Just 2 climbs, 2 5,000-foot climbs, which take off, you know. For someone like me, it's a 2-hour climb, something like that. So that's that. So I'll stop the little slideshow here. Please interrupt me at any time. Okay. I got a wealth of knowledge of just vaccinations. You got to pay for your own when you do this. You check with the travel clinic at Mass General, and they give you suggested vaccinations. And so I got tetanus, a hep something, B or A, and maybe a malaria. And so, but you have to pay out of pocket for that. And so that was like $500. And then they suggested I get the rabies vaccination, which I didn't know there was a preventive vaccination for rabies or something like that. I thought you only got it if you got rabies or whatever to save your life. And they suggested I get the rabies vaccination, and that was like $700. So I didn't get it. I didn't tell Susan. I didn't tell my girlfriend. I said, yeah, I'm all set. I got the vaccinations. I told her. I wasn't, the visa application I needed visas for Russia, Kazakhstan, and China. And I hired a visa company in Boston to get them for me. That was $700. So the whole trip cost like $15,000. Because 3,000 of it was 2 plane rides. The plane ride from Boston to Madrid, then the plane from Shanghai to San Francisco. So I was hoping to spend $50 a day for the 4 months I would be on the trip, and I ended up. So that would have been $6,000 for my actual journey time. I spent like $75 a day, and so now it's $9,000. You know, the most expensive part was Europe. You know, the euro and the American dollars. So, but in China, sometimes I spent $7 a night for a hotel room. I went without running water for about 5 weeks. Yeah. Anyways, let me do this. Okay. Should I reactivate this, Matt? Service canceled.
You can close it for now.
Just
but
close
probably,
this?
in the upper right-hand corner there's an X. Yeah, it looks like you can.
It won't do it. So I guess I have to hit OK.
Yeah, you might want to choose what's in that drop-down box
Help?
there. You see the drop-down box in the middle there? what do you want to do, and beneath that, what else? Remind me later, yeah.
Okay.
You might want to do that because could take time.
Okay. So now let me see. I want to go to my slideshow. So you know what? I'll do this. Okay. So this is I can stop this at any time. If you have bike questions, you might stump me on some of the questions because of my my knowing the specifics of the bike, like how many gears in the back cassette, or how many in the front. I use a bike that's called a touring bike with a triple in the front for getting up over the hills. Okay, it's a touring bike and not a road bike, but I have tires that are a little bit wider than than road tires. I'm in Spain here. Second time that I've cycled, that I've flown to Madrid. I did a competition in the Pyrenees about 4 years ago. So I was already familiar with being in north of Madrid. And though this is late April, I started this trip a year ago, I'm in the desert right away. 110, right away. Yeah, that's what this is. So it was no picnic right away. I made some mistakes on my first day. That's the castle or something in north of Madrid. Yeah, I was right away. I was lost. Your first day out of a major city, lost is the only thing that happens. You got to make your way out of the major city. This is the desert of northern Spain. I think the next flip is, I've seen these things before. These are public water fountains. I've been in Europe many times, and I said I'd never drink out of one of these, and on day one I had to because I ran out of water. I'm still getting situated here, and right away I ran out of water, and so I drank, and I guess I was okay. Just a public water fountain. That's a flat tire. You're looking at the Pyrenees already. I made it to the Pyrenees. The Pyrenees are 300 miles away from Madrid, so I was averaging almost 100 miles a day at this point. So, and it's late April, and they are now in front of me. I didn't get into snow. Obviously I saw snow, but so this is 1,500 meters. Spain on one side, France on the other. That's a mile up. I just climbed that. Again, an hour and a half, whatever it took. So now I'm going to go downhill for 8 miles at 10% down, which is free fall. You have to brake. You can't free fall it because the curves are too tight, and you can hit 50 miles an hour, and a touring bike you can't. It's too dangerous. This is just a bike path, and I'm in France now. So, nothing more than that. And you can relax on a bike path. You're off the road. That's what's nice about it, because you're always tense the whole time. Well, sort of tense. A thing that I like to call this is one of my REI moments. I've spoken at 4 REI stores. This is an REI moment. And I see their commercial or whatever where the kid's hanging off the side of the mountain and he's sleeping or whatever, and he's got ladder, he's got ropes and stuff and whatever. And I go, who does that stuff? Nobody does that. I never met anybody who did that. And I said, I should be the REI spokesman, because here I am by the side of the river in France, okay? And there's some better ones out there. I should, see the REI logo there? Yeah, they need me to sell their stuff. They're not gonna do that. No, they have their own guys. If you ever been to France, you're on the secondary roads in France, you're heading into town, into one town to another, from Hooksett to Amherst or wherever, to Milford or whatever. The trees greet you. They line the side of the road on the main street, 50 years ago, they started planting those trees, whatever king or emperor or what have you, and so you know you're getting into town when you see the trees line up. And sometimes they line up for 400 feet, sometimes they line up for 5 miles. It's pretty impressive. You know, I've seen that many times in my life. It's good idea. Yeah. This is the Mediterranean. I'm in southern France here. Yeah, it was pretty warm. I was okay. So I'm in Nice. You know, Nice, Cannes, Monte Carlo, Monaco, just lines up. I get lost a little bit, but nice area. Yep, I grew the beard. I didn't shave for the whole time. And it was kind of a plan. I thought it ended up being a good idea. I figured by the time I got to China, they wouldn't know what I was or who I was. And that was okay with me. This is Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo's a port. Ever been there? I've been there a couple times. It's just a port. It's very small. Busy, busy, busy. High rises and stuff. And I'm never impressed. Yeah, they got the big ships and stuff. Yeah, very interesting. So now I'm in Italy. I'm going through the vineyards. Very easy. I'm making a beeline for Venice. I'm going straight. I'm going 95 miles a day here. This is, you know, I wear sunblock and long sleeves, so I mostly just on my face. But I always wear a bandana. So if it's 2 p.m. and I get a little lazy and I'm feeling the heat, just lift up the bandana while I'm riding, put my sunglasses down, and keep going. It works. It works. It's a good thing, you know, this part of the face. And at night, if you're riding into the night, which I did, the bugs, you wear the bandana. And also later on, when I got into Russia, I rode through locusts for 2 days, for about an hour each day. Locusts. Not a swarm of locusts, but a whole bunch of locusts coming, you know, like big grasshoppers fly around. And so the bandana, you know, they're hitting me, you know, so. It has many multiple uses to wear a bandana. I rode through locusts. I rode through a sandstorm. I got caught in a sandstorm once in Kazakhstan. Just a cemetery, I guess. Yeah, church. Yeah, locust twice. And these guys were, I'm already in Croatia here, and I stayed in a pretty inexpensive hotel, and the guy said, you know, you're a cyclist, you're from America. And then he called the press over, and then the next day they interviewed me, and these guys are reporters. And they sent me the link, and it was in, about a week later. It was pretty cool. It was in Croatian. Yeah, it was. Yeah, so I got interviewed like 3 times on this trip. Yeah, once in Nebraska. It's online. A car show, Croatia. Nice stuff. Nice Saturday morning. So I'm going to Hungary. Yeah, so Spain, France, Italy, Slovenia, Croatia, Hungary. I'm going to Hungary now. At this point, I think there's a flip here. This is pretty. These are touring cyclists, a little older touring cyclists. There were 4 people from France, and they were on recumbent trikes. It's a 3-wheeler bicycle that you can sit down on, and they were towing their gear behind them. Slow, probably 40 miles a day, maybe 50 on a good day. And they were going to be on the road for 4 months. So, all retired, you know, they spoke good English. Yep. Just not in a big hurry. I'm always in a hurry. A lot of Catholic influence in this part of the world. Yeah, it's everywhere. This is just a flop house kind of. It happened. What is it? Pensions are everywhere in Hungary and Romania. You see the sign everywhere. Pensions. So I would go to this edge of town and the gas station, convenience store, And the small town, 5,000 people, and the guy spoke a little bit of English, and it's obvious who I am. I mean, my bike is loaded and whatever, and I would say, sleep, and then he would just call somebody who spoke English, and then a three-way conversation would ensue, and then they know somebody who owned a pension, and the guy who owned it literally came to the gas station, and I would follow him to his pension, which is 2 miles into town, and for $20 I crashed there. And this guy was great, and it happened like just that way, like 3 or 4 times. So this guy was really good. He brought me to dinner that night. There he is. He owned the pension. He brought me to dinner. He had the English Hungarian dictionary. It was all good. Yeah. The next day, he brought me to his wine cellar. Yes, he wanted to give me booze the next morning. Right, yeah. 2,000 miles at this point, so I'm in Hungary, I've hit 2,000 miles. Yeah. I always drew a crowd. This is one of them. The kid on the left spoke some English, so I took their picture. Yeah. These are pretty good. These are Germans, 3 men and a woman, and they're college students, and they're heading to India to do some project for the summer, water conservation or something. And so they're that's far. That's far. And they were hardy. They were making 80 to 100 miles a day. But they were going through Pakistan. That was their route. They were going through Pakistan. And they told me as a group that as the Germans, they have free entry, meaning just flash your passport and you can go. You don't need a visa. But they weren't sure if they were going to bite it. They thought that the 3 men alone, they would consider it. But with the woman as part of the group, they thought that it might be too sketchy. But they would make that decision once they got to the border. They would talk to the border guards and say, what do you think? And then do whatever they said. That's how some of us travel. That's how I decided to travel that way once I got to Kazakhstan. So, you got to know this. Kazakhstan and Pakistan not the same. Afghanistan, they sound the same, but you've got to do your homework. I took her pictures because she was cute. Yeah, she's cute. Yeah. You stop at all the cafes. You ride 20 miles, stop at a cafe. Ride 20 miles, stop at a cafe. That's what you do, which is great stuff. You have all day. These are 2 American Peace Corps workers in Romania, and they said that according to them, they told me that the Peace Corps was all done in Romania. They were probably the economy was getting better, but English. I had like straight American English for the first time in months. Field worker, in a month. That was probably a month by then. A field worker, I said, man, is that guy doing that by himself? 2, my favorite touring, 2 Germans, 2 guys. I were over there for a couple days. When you're on the East Coast of the United States, when you're from this area of the world, you always kind of, can I put my tent there? I don't want to bother anybody. You kind of like, we have an attitude of you don't want to, if I stuck my tent in the middle of the Hooksett athletic field, I think the police would come within about 10 minutes. I just think that they would, which is a good thing, But in other parts of the world, even in Nebraska, they don't care. And these Germans say, they can't even think like I think, okay? Like, the world is theirs. Everything's okay. Don't leave a mark. Don't leave a trace. Nobody cares. We're not doing anything wrong. Don't assume, don't have this guilt complex with everything that you do. Everything is good. And I like, it's a great attitude. They're great travelers. I run into many Germans. They go all over the world. And these 2 kids, so, again, I'm not sure where I am here. It might be the Ukraine. Yeah, that's the bike. Yeah. When you take a break, this is the Black Sea. So the Black Sea's on my right. I'm going east. And I figured, well, I can't get lost. Just keep it on my right. And that's kind of how you do things sometimes. Again, another REI moment. I'm sleeping in the field somewhere in the Ukraine. Yeah. Yeah, pretty good. I remember that night. Yeah. Yeah, you can't read the words sometimes, but the number system was the same. And even in China, the numbers said 1, 2, 3, 4, so it really helped by the time I got there. Mosque, maybe Greek, Orthodox of some sort. Yeah. I'm at 3,000 miles here. I am right around in Russia. I think I am in Russia here. Or the next day. Yeah, Mariupol. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, okay, the next day I'm in Russia, and I feel like, I'll give a little library thing here. So the next day I'm going to Russia, my first visa, my first time into Russia. I'm about 20 miles from the Russian border here, I'm sleeping in the field. I feel like I'm going to invade Russia the next day. That's my whole thought. I feel like I'm in a John le Carre novel, okay, where, the Cold War, and I got to sneak into Russia and what have you. And you know what? I got there, I was nervous. They got there and just said, go. I remember actually the first thing the guy said, I saw the trucks are here and I'm pulling up to the border guard and he's on his walkie-talkie and he goes, narcotics? And I go, huh? He says, narcotics. I go, no narcotics. And then he sent me forward, and the truth was, my doctor had given me prescription pain pills, just in case I, broke my wrist in the middle of the desert. So I did have narcotics, but they could kill us. Go, American. I'm no threat to them, countries protect their borders from certain other countries. Americans are pretty much okay to go, pretty much everywhere. A lot of World War II monuments and World War I, a lot of them everywhere in this part of the world. I was completely surprised, and you know what, and this is my little history thing, I know growing up in the 4th grade and reading about World War I and World War II, we think we won those wars, okay? It was all because of us, especially World War II. And I'll bet you the Russians think they didn't even need us, okay? We could have stayed out of it. They would have taken care of the whole thing all by themselves in due time, So it's interesting to see. I like to see how the Russian history books taught about World War II, because this is a World War I memorial. I can tell by that. But they were everywhere. Mini market. Yeah. I'm in Russia here. I was in Russia for about 800 miles. Internet cafe, bunch of kids. I drew a big crowd. They just loved me to death. Big crowd. Saw a lot of these in about a 300-mile span. Sidecars, working order. Gold teeth. Saw a lot of gold teeth in this area. Very poor. Another one. Yeah, this guy chased me for a little while. He kept bothering me. He kept wanting to talk to me. Whatever. He's in a sidecar. Yeah, pretty interesting here. Do we know what that is on the left? It's an abacus. So I go into this little variety store that sells stuff, and I put 4 things on the counter, and she goes like this, and then tells me what I owe her. Wow, pretty impressive, Yeah. Again, so for about 300 miles, you see like abacuses. Very impressive the way she was able to do that. But she had the calculator just in case, if I disputed it. But she'd just go wing, 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 $4.
Just a general question about the money. When you go from one country to another, you have to exchange the money? Or?
The euro lasted from Madrid, Spain, France, Italy, and I think Slovenia was on the euro. After that, I had to get money for every next country. They were all on their own money system. And here's my 2 cents about your credit card and your debit card. Will it work everywhere? Yes, sometimes. You can't be sure. It would work at the hotel and not work at the grocery store. Same card. So you could not be without their cash of that country. Same with the ATM, the logo, the Cirrus logo or whatever. Okay, my Eastern Bank thing, you stick your debit card in there, it says English, you hit English, and then you're good to go. You can figure it out, all right? So you can't ever be without the cash because you're never sure if your debit card or your credit card will work. It's up to the vendor. They just don't want to take your credit card. You can't. It's not up for debate. They don't take it. So you got to have the cash. So I kept changing it, and it slows you down. It slows you down. But
So I'm hearing the exchange as you go into the next country, etc., was done like at an ATM. I was going to ask my next question. Was the exchange rate, from your point of view, reasonably fair, or did that become a problem?
could never figure it out on the fly. Okay, I didn't really exchange a lot of money. Okay, what I would do is, I would be in like Croatia for 2 days. So I would get $100. Okay, and if I still had Croatian money when I went into Hungary, I just didn't exchange the Croatian money. I just would get Hungarian money with my debit card. So I came back with money from like 8 countries. All right. But I know one time I had some American money. I had like $40 American, and then I had like a couple of $100 Romanian, and I'm giving it to the Russian to exchange, and he sends me the money back, and now I'm counting the money from each pile, and I go, man, he didn't give me nothing for $40 American. I got 0 for that money, and I got more for. But what are you going to debate?
Right.
You don't know what to do. You're going to give it back to him. So I didn't exchange money. I spent down. I was in the Ukraine for a week, so you have to get your own money, the money of the country. Money talks. Now, this is a hotel they were remodeling it, but they still let me sleep in it. Again, I'm almost in Kazakhstan. I'm still in Russia here, and this is like a nothing hotel. I'm probably down to about $15.